या संप्रदाय कर्तृभ्यो वंश ऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यः सर्वपप्लोवरहितः प्रज्ञाघनः प्रत्यगर्तो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि. Profound Sashtang Namaskars to Swami Paramarthananda Saraswati Swamiji. He has been responsible for giving this talks through us, and we hope we can understand and try to say and share what he has taught us. Of course, sincere thanks to Dr. Timothy Pegre who brought us all together under his tutelage and be a part of this program. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyumavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namah. Sanatana Dharma. We are all Sanatana Dharmis. So we should know what is adharma, then we understand what is dharma. In the 18th chapter, there is a lot that has been mentioned about Swadharma. Bhagvadgita is a moksha shastra, and so we should by now understand that moksha is inner transformation. The 18th chapter is moksha sannyasa yoga. Where is sannyasa? To what? We will understand as we go by. We must also recollect that there was a karma sannyasa yoga, a chapter where there is sannyasa to karma, an attitude that has been a change, a right attitude and a right action. Rights that dharma confers also gives duties that it imposes on us. It is egoism and false values and lower desires in the form of adharma, unrighteousness, which slyly, silently, like a thief at night, like a comrade to come to save you, like a servant who comes to attend on us, like a counselor who comes to warn you. Oh, wicked are those 1,000 tricks that capture your heart. We must be alert against temptations that chinks your consciousness, eats into that personality that you have, the swadharma, that you have built up with laborious care. The fort is no longer under your control, and we are reduced into a puppet manipulated by our own inner enemies. Sanatan Dharma has several pillars. Amongst the most important are 6, and amongst them, truth, compassion, tranquility, non-violence are the most important. We have the story of King Parikshit, who is the grandson of Arjuna. And in his wonderful dynasty, the Kuru dynasty, he once heard of a man who was beating up the legs of a bull. He was surprised and said, how could this ever happen? Later on, when he asked the bull what really happened, he realized that the bull really didn't say a word. And then he said, oh bull, you are none other than Dharma the bull. You have 4 legs: austerity, cleanliness, compassion, and truth. In Satya Yuga, the Dharma bull had 4 legs. They say in Kali Yuga, he is resting on 1 leg. We are familiar with this word delusion, moha, which started in the 2nd chapter. And Arjuna had that delusion at that time. Came a long way into Vishwarupa Darshana. Till the 18th chapter where Arjuna asked this question, Krishna, please tell me what is the true nature of sannyasa and tyaga. Shall we say that this dharma yuddha was not confined to Kurukshetra of those days, but it is a dharma yuddha which is going on in our minds every single day? Should I do? Should I not do? Should I say? Should I not say? Should I act? Should I not act? What should I do? What is the right dharma when I do everything in our daily lives? If we look at these chapters of the Bhagavad Gita and we look at the 13th to the 18th chapter, enlightenment, Jnana Yoga, is the sadhana traya vichara in the 13th chapter. The Asi Padartha, the Pada traya vichara, is in these 6 chapters, and that is what shows up as Aikyam. And very importantly, the Ghataka traya vichara which is the highlight of the 18th chapter and even the few chapters from the 13th chapter onwards, is Sadguna, the character. And that is what is interesting. It is a Moksha Shastra, but it is the character, the Sadguna, which is the highlight of this whole segment. No wonder management people take Sadguna as a part of their teachings. So we are familiar that there is a consistent systematic study which is required. It is over a length of time. There have to be a lot of questions, sub-questions. We should be doubt-free. We should have a conviction. We should have nishtha. And when that nishtha is an assimilation, like sugar is stirred in a cup of tea, we feel that we have come to Moksha Shastra and the end of moksha. But now we are talking about Arjuna, the escapist Arjuna, who wants renunciation. He's still confused on what is sannyasa and what is tyaga. This chapter has been so nicely grouped into several sections by Swami Paramarthanandaji. And I take this as the first 12 verses differentiating between or putting together sannyasa and renunciation, which is the karma yoga part, the 13th to the 17th verses, which talks about the Atma Swarupan, and that is the Jnana Yoga part, the characters which stretch from the 18th to the 40th verse, and that is the Sadguna part. Then, of course, the Karma Yoga plus Jnana Yoga part, which is the central theme of the Bhagvadgita, and then we have the Upasamhara.
Krishna begins answering Arjuna's question from the second verse of the 18th chapter. The second and third verses tell us about what the sages and the scholars say about what is sannyasa and what is tyaga. This is not Krishna's impression. It is what the sages have told. Sannyasa is giving up kamya karma, nishiddha and prayaschitta karma, and doing only the nitya and naimittika karma. Tyaga is giving up the materialistic gain. So kamya karma tyaga is sannyasa and karma phala tyaga is tyaga. In the fifth verse, Lord Krishna is addressing majority of us who are not ready for total renunciation. He says, never think of renouncing the religious way of life. It is a very important support for our emotional mind. The three basic religious disciplines which should never be given up are yajna, dana, and tapa. Yajna is worship of the Lord in whatever form it is done. Dana is charity, share whatever you have. And tapa is austerity. Karma is a common factor for all of them. It is yajna karma, dana karma, and tapa karma. Yajno, dana, tapaschaiva, pavanani manishinaha. These three religious practices are the purifiers for our mind, removal of the emotional obstacles for the Vedantic study. And how should they be performed? Sangam tyaktva phalanicha. It should be done without getting attached to the religious karma nor the materialistic result. Iti nischitam matam uttamam. This is Lord Krishna's verdict. So renouncing yajna, dana, and tapa, the basic spiritual disciplines, is not right. Some people leave it not knowing the value. That is out of delusion or ignorance. That is tamasika sannyasa. Both Rajasic and Sattvic person know that they are unprepared students. But a Rajasic person does not want any physical discomfort to his body. So he gives up the karma itself. Whereas a Sattvic person knows he wants moksha, which requires jnanam, that requires chitta shuddhi. So for this Sattvika karma has to be done like the Pancha Mahayajna, which we have heard before. In verses 10, 11, and 12, Lord Krishna talks about karma yoga, which is called Sattvika Sannyasa in this chapter. A karma yogi understands his duty in life. Akushalam karma na dveshti. He does not hate or complain about any unpleasant duty. Kushale na anusajjate. nor does he get attached to any pleasant duties. Sattvam samavishta, with a balanced mind, with a balanced attitude, he is fit for Shravanam and Manana. Now, verse 12 talks about a karmi and a sannyasi. A tyagi or a karmi is one who is not a karma yogi. There are three types of result that he incurs. There is ishtapalam, anishtapalam, and mishrapalam. That is punyam, papam, and a mixture of both, which gives rise to manushya janma. That is punarapi janam, punarapi marana. Whereas a sannyasi, he does not have punarjanma because his karma will get him chitta shuddhi and jnanam before the karma produces any papa and punya. So Lord Krishna concludes his answer to Arjuna in this verse by saying, sannyasa is the same as tyaga, which is the same as karma yoga of the second chapter, which is the satvika karma of this 18th chapter. We have some verses which we have already seen before in the second chapter, the third chapter, and the sixth chapter. So sannyasa and tyaga are discussed right from the second chapter. Like verse 48 says, yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. And verse 30 of third chapter, mai sarvani karmani sannyasat atma chetasa. And the fourth verse of sixth chapter says, sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudas tadochyate.
We move on to the 13th to 17th verses, and this is the second summary about the Jnana Yoga, Atma, Akarta, Abhokta part. So there has to be some Atma and Atma Viveka. We would understand this Jnana Yoga, understanding the Atma, when we know what is the nature of consciousness. And Swami Paramarthanandaji clearly says that consciousness is not a part, a property, or a product of the body. It is an independent principle that pervades and enlivens the body. It is not limited by the boundaries of the body. It continues to survive even after the death of this body. And the surviving consciousness is not available for transaction because it needs a medium, which is the body, for all transactions. There have been several verses that deal with Jnana Yoga in the second, the fourth, and the fifth chapter, which we can always refer to as we have after the class. So what is the spiritual sadhana that we should follow? We must do the Karma Yoga. We must get Chitta Shuddhi. Then we are clearly at the level of Jnana Yogyata, or we have the Sadhana Satushtaya Sampanna. Only then can we move towards Jnana Yoga. Then we have to recognize what is Atma and Anatma. Atma, Anatma, Viveka. If we do that, we must identify with Atma and disidentify from Anatma. The light and bulb are the visible Anatma, and that electricity which flows in these several bulbs is the Atma. Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, listening to the scriptures, removal of all doubts, and to with conviction claim that consciousness is my true nature, is the essence of a Moksha Shastra. If we are performers of action and receiver of the Karma Phala as a Karta and a Bhokta, we are samsaris. However, if we understand that we are neither a doer nor an enjoyer like a Akarta or a Abhokta, we tend to become asamsaris. Let us look at what is the Anatma, the Panchatmika Anatma as explained in the verses in the Jnana Yoga part. So Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and the presiding deities of all the Indriyas, which are known as the Adhisthana Devatas, which together is called as the Hiranyagarbha Tattvam, or the presiding principle, form the entire Anatma part. Our activities could be legitimate or dharmic, they could be viparitam or adharmic, which has been explained as Nyayam va, Viparitam va. So this Atma has no action, it has no activities. It is the consciousness principle. It is like the light principle. It is in the presence of this light that a clearly sattvic person gets into moksha shastra, and it is in the same light that a thief does adharmic actions like going in to do some thefts. So the Ajnani's perspective identifies with the Anatma and they lose the Atma, which is explained in the 16th verse. And the Jnani's perspective is he abides in the Atma. There is a shift in identification towards Jnana Yoga, which is called as Jnana Yoga, and abiding in this new identity, which is the inner transformation, is moksha. We do japa, puja, social service, pilgrimages, dhanam, bhajam, every day in different ways for chitta shuddhi, which is karma yoga. But the intellectual exercise that you take up to know that you are free, that you are the Atma, is Jnana Yoga. There is a way of life, and chapter 13, 14, 15, and also in the Veda Antabhaga have used several verses where these phrases, Abhayam, Sattva Samshuddhihi, Jnana Yoga, Vashishthihi, Danam, Damaha, which is sense control, Yajna, Swadhyaya, Tapaha, Arjavam, Ahimsa, Satyam, Akrodaha, Tyagaha, Shantihi, tranquility, Aloluptam, freedom from temptation, Krihi, modesty, Tejaha, Kshamaha, Dhriti. Several of these verses, some of these phrases which have come earlier are also coming up in the 18th chapter, are all a part of Sampadam Daivam, which is the Daivi Sampad. What is it that we need to know? We know there is Prakriti and Purusha. We have understood in the 13th chapter there is Kshetram and Kshetrajna. And they also have clearly told us what is Jnanam. The Lord says the only thing that need be known is the Atma or the Brahman, which is knowledge. And that is understood only by a prepared mind. I would like to remind every one of us about a couple of these verses from the Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantirarjanam, Acharyopasanam, Shaucham, Stairyam, Atma Vinigraha. And these humility, simplicity, non-violence, forbearance, uprightness, as we move on further, steadfastness, self-restraint, Shaucham, purity in physical, verbal, and mental form, detachment from sense objects, Indriya, Thineshu, Vairagyam, absence of egoism, which is Anahankaraha, constantly being reminded that we should do away with the bodily identification. Asatyamanaha, this passion, equipoise, samachitvam, Vivikta Deshas Sevitam, seclude away towards a solitary place, away from too many things and indulging with too much of people company. Such a big list. Etat proktam iti jnanam. So clearly said that this is knowledge. This is jnanam. This personality is jnanam. Right from the 13th chapter, there has been a discussion on personality. And this slide, which we can always see later on, tells us what personality changes we should cultivate and what we should not cultivate. Having said that, let us move to the third summary.
The third summary starts from the 18th verse and goes on up to the 40th verse. All our activities are broadly classified into Jnana Vyavahara and Karma Vyavahara. Jnana Vyavahara produces some Raga and Dvesha, which produces Karma. Each of this Vyavahara has three fractals: Jnanam, Jnana, Jneya, and Jnata. And Karma Vyavahara has Karanam, Karma, and Karta. Lord Krishna takes up Jnanam, Karma, and Karta for analysis based on the guna as Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Self-knowledge has to grow in three levels. I am the body is Tamasa. I am the mind is Rajasic. And I am the consciousness is Sattvic. Sattva. Yeah. Yeah. In Sanskrit, guna is a concept which is translated as quality, peculiarity, attribute, and a property. Sattva is all goodness, purity, balance, and harmony. Rajas is passion and energy, but more of a materialistic attitude. And tamas is lethargy and ignorance. The Rajasic knowledge is the intermediate one. This person has progressed from body to mind. Such a person is Dvaita. He believes he is the Karta and Bhokta. A tamasic knowledge is seen in totally materialistic person. He identifies himself with the physical body alone. Verses 23, 24, and 25 talk about the karma. Satvika karma is devoid of attachment and performed without any ragadvesha. So happiness depends only on transforming oneself. Whereas a rajasic karma, one gains happiness by changing the situation or the setup. There is a misconception that there is improvement if our surroundings is improved. Tamasic karma is one which is done without any proper planning or thinking and not considering the consequences, or so there's loss in time in terms of time, effort, and money. Verses 26, 27, and 28 talk about the karta. With respect to peace, happiness, and security, a sattvic karta transforms from what I have to what I am. Sattvic doer is free from attachment. He is free from egoism. He is endowed with the will and enthusiasm, and he is unaffected by success and failure. A rajasic doer, he is the one who has attachment and is desirous of the results of action. Tamasic doer is an dirgha sutri. He is a procrastinator. Verses 30 to 32 talk about the buddhi, which is clearly depicted in this slide. Sattva guna is full of total knowledge. Rajoguna is a confused person with partial knowledge, and Tamoguna is bliss because of total ignorance. The intellect provides clarity for the ultimate goal of life, but a person requires dhriti or willpower. Sattvic will is the one where one sustains the activities of mind, the prana and the senses. Rajasic will is the one which is because of the results of our attachments, and tamasic, a person gives up and he is an indolent person. Now, so what is the logical reasoning of explaining sukha after taking up the three types of jnana, karta, karma, buddhi, and dhriti? All of us want sukha, whether we are sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic. So sukha is the spiritual ananda that one decides from the spiritual way of life. This is the sattvika sukha. Rajasika sukha is by the materialistic comfort. And now coming to the 40th verse of this segment, why do we need to understand the three gunas? This helps us to lead a better way of life, and it is useful for a spiritual sadhana. So use Shastras as a mirror to evaluate oneself. This is for our introspection only and not for judging others.
The verses from 41 to 49 and from 50 to 55 would be the fourth summary. Karma Yoga is the Pravritti Marga and Jnana Yoga is the Nivritti Marga. Karma Yoga is a lifestyle to purify the mind. Jnana Yoga is practice of that lifestyle with Ishvara Arpana of all the actions. Engaged in your own duty, a person attains purity by changing the attitude, the way the duty is done. So there is karma, there is karma phala, and there is a karma phala data, the one who gets that phala because of the karma we do. A karma yogi maintains a samatvam and learns from each experience, be it good or bad. Arjuna here is a kshatriya soldier, and dharma rakshana, he has a swadharma. Atma jnana or moksha jnana is the most important, as we know, and that is also known as naishkarma siddhi. In this verse, asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigata spriha naishkarma siddhim paramam. That is a state of actionlessness. All actions need be done, all the karma has to be done, but there has to be no attachment either to the action. It must be done with a complete Ishwar Arpana Bhava and a Prasada Buddhi. Siddhim prapto yatho brahma tathapnoti nibodhame samasenaiva kaunteya. Jnana Yoga in this verse very clearly explains the Nididhyasana part, which has been explained to us very clearly by Swami Paramarthanandaji in the Dhyana Yoga chapter as not just meditation, but as Vedantic meditation. Clear intellect is Vishuddhaya Buddhaya Yukta. There is a restraint on the mind by will. It is free will that is used here. We renounce the sense objects. We have to give up likes and dislikes. There are three relationships that we must always have, as explained in the 52nd verse. Ishvara Sambandha, Guru Sambandha, and Shastra Sambandha. They should always be kept invoked. So we have to give up egoism, power, arrogance, desire, anger, possessions, and free from mamakara. We have to be tranquil in the mind, and then one becomes fit for becoming or taking up Brahma Jnana. Jnana Nishtha or Sthira Prajna or Atma Nishtha. This Nishtha means abiding in the knowledge that has been gained. Brahma Bhutaha Prasannatma na shochati na akanchati samasarveshu bhuteshu. Always there has to be a very clear understanding that there has to be samatvam. Mad bhaktim lavate param. Such a person will reach the Lord. And how do we understand that we are in that phrase of that frame of mind? When we understand what is how FIR. We have understood it over the several classes. Nididhyasana Rupa Bhakti. Nididhyasana Rupa Bhakti gives Ishvara Jnana Nishtha. There is a conviction when we do Nididhyasana, that assimilation of knowledge of God, both in the higher nature, which is the para prakriti or vijnanam, and the lower nature, which is the apara prakriti or jnanam, is the important thing. And yavan here means saguna rupa, tattvataha yaha is the understanding of the nirguna swarupa of the Lord, which is the form of the consciousness principle. In verses 41 to 49, the highlight is swadharma. And in verses 56 to 62, the highlight is the attitude of bhakti. So bhakti is an aspect of devotion. It is a type of devotion. Various types, we know the Navarasa. But this bhakti is essential, be it Dharma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, or even in Jnana Yoga. So if we have understood or trying to understand, and in the process of Nididhyasana, there's no way we can leave bhakti. Bhakti is in and through a part of the whole exercise of clearing our changing our transformations. So we have to do our prayatna. But more important is the grace of the Lord, Ishvara Anugraha. Sharanagati is a word which we must understand. It is that current that flows both through karma and bhakti. To all actions, ever depending on me, is what Sri Krishna says. Karma Yoga is relevant only if the goal is spiritual. The immediate goal is Chitta Shuddhi, and the ultimate goal is the Lord Himself. It is through pain that we exhaust our karmas. We get educated through pain, we gain through each experience. So the Prakriti here means Swabhava, and therefore the rule is Go by your nature. That is the essence of the 59th verse. In the 60th verse, Sri Krishna says, there is a lot of emphasis on swabhava. So when they say about the various classifications of the society, it is not the varna ashrama of society, but it is a guna which makes us choose our profession. Our profession is based on our swabhava, our guna. And this guna means your attitude, your inclination. Do not try to go against your nature, is what Lord Sri Krishna says. And he says, you must like the profession you choose. The question comes, are you a victim of circumstances? Or are you wise to remain unshaken? And that is the answer given in the 60th verse. So the Lord is the indweller. He is the indweller in all the people, in all the bhutani. And how are they? Yantra rudani. Lord is the indweller. The work is karma. Convert this karma into karma yoga through Ishvara Arpana and Prasada Buddhi. So the Sakshi Chaitanya is the same, be it a saint or a sinner. The example given is the diesel or the petrol that is given and is used in various vehicles. The fuel is the same. The God is like the fuel. But the vehicle takes a different route because of the driver who is driving the vehicle. Yantra Rudani, this word has been misunderstood as though we are all puppets in God's hands. And that's why this question, what is Samanya Karanam and what is Vishesha Karanam? Do not interpret that we are puppets in God's hands. Samanya Karanam is Bhagwan. He is the only lending general life or consciousness principle, whereas the Vishesha Karanam is the specific type of action which is determined by our free will. The verse 63 highlights Guhya Guhyataram, and that means it is the greatest, the rarest of secrets of all secrets. Sri Krishna says in this verse that all that has been told from the 11th verse of the 2nd chapter to the 62nd verse of the 18th chapter, the Gita way of life, the Gita vision of truth, is the greatest and the rarest of secrets. And why does he say that? It needs initiation. It is extremely subtle and it is eternal. If we read a book, we may not be able to understand it. It needs a teacher to explain and tell us word by word and phrase by phrase to understand the meaning of those words in the context. So it is essential that the teachings be given to the initiated who has sadhana chatushtaya. Even if it is told to all, anyways, some understand alone, only some understand, a lot of them may not understand. The teacher gives all the teachings and never holds back. It is the student who is encouraged to use free will, make your own choices to attain moksha. And that's why Sri Krishna says, I have told you everything, O Arjuna, yatechasi tatha kuru. Now you must do what you need to do. So the knowledge is imparted. Learn to make your decisions. Learn to face the consequences. Don't use a blame game. Be healthy parenting to your people around and also do healthy teaching. In the 64th verse, Sri Krishna repeats the secret again to Arjuna. He says, lest Arjuna make a wrong choice, because Arjuna has taken refuge. He has taken Sharanagati in Krishna. And therefore the Lord Krishna, the Guru, the teacher, they feel committed to us. If we are true students, there is a commitment, and so we will not falter. So the summary of the Karma Yoga, active God-centered lifestyle where I contribute positively to society, is Karma Yoga. Manmana bhava madbhaktaha madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishya satyam te prapti jane priyosim te. Fix the mind on me, be my devotee, be my worshipper, surrender to me. You should reach me alone. Truly, this is a promise, is what Sri Krishna says. And the similar kind of verse is the 34th verse in the 9th chapter, which is above. So God being the goal versus we have to understand and change the understanding that God is the only goal. Then we become the Uttama Mumukshu. Karma Yoga is a sadhana chatushtaya. And this is 100% guarantee that the Lord gives. He says, Mame Vaishya, next step, reach me through Jnana Yoga. And this is not something that we reach as a destination somewhere else, but this is a inner transformation that we understand as we move on. The summary of the Jnana Yoga is understood clearly in the 66th verse. And this is hidden in this verse. It is implicit. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayisyami cha maschujaha. Having renounced all action, seek me, says the Lord, the non-dual, as your shelter. I shall liberate you from all the sins, and you need not grieve. So this is the final Jnana Yoga summary. It is a final teaching verse of the Gita Shastra, and so it is known as the Charama Shloka. Sarva Dharma Parityajya is Jnana Yoga as the ultimate means of liberation, and this is clearly understood and explained in this verse. There is a small understanding and also a misunderstanding. There is a contradiction. Sarva dharma parityaga. Does it mean that you leave all dharma? And mamekam sharanam vraja. Does it mean that you seek refuge only in Sri Krishna? What about these so many other gods that we have in the Hindu dharma, so-called several gods? So Swami Paramarthanandaji says, Adi Shankara Bhagavad Padacharya has given in his Bhashya that Sarva Dharma, the word added is Sarva Dharma, Sarva Adharma Parityajya. So all the Punya Papa Karma, whether it is Kaika, Vachika or Manasika Karmani, have to be left. That is the understanding. It is not leaving Dharma. It is the various karmas that we do that have to be left. Karma Tyaga is Deha Abhimana Tyaga. We have a lot of identification with the body. And when we leave this Deha Abhimana, we are moving towards, with knowledge, we move towards Karma Sannyasa. When Deha Abhimana is given up, what else is there? We have Dehi, the indweller. We must develop a conviction for the Dehi Abhimana. And that is Atma Jnana, which is the Jivatma Swarupa Jnana, which is the Tvam Padartha understood in these chapters in the third Shatkam. So Mamekam Sharanam Vraja is Paramatma Aikya Jnanam, which is Ishvara Sharanagati. What is the meaning of this word Mam here? Does it mean only Sri Krishna? Sri Krishna says, this is the Arupa Ishvara, the highest nature of God. This is the Nirguna Brahma. It is the Sri Krishna Paramatma, who is the all-pervading Satchidananda Swarupa. You have to take Sharanagati into that Nirguna Brahma or the Arupa Ishvara. Ekam means Advitiya, the one without the second, which is Advaita. And now understand that these are false notions. We have to drop the false notion. Moksha is not going somewhere else, but it is dropping the notion by getting the right knowledge. And this knowledge is called Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. Hence, this verse is actually a Mahavakya. This Jnanam itself is Sharanagati. It is not just falling at the feet of the Lord. It is this understanding which is Sharanagati. There is no other Sharanagati other than this Jnanam, says Swami Paramarthananda Saraswati Swami. It is therefore beyond time and space which is finite. Aham tvam mokshayishyami. This is the Jnana Phalam. And Sarva Papebhyo means not just the simple limited papas, but it includes a Sanchita, Agami and Prarabdha karmas, which means you are released. Ajnani Bhakta therefore becomes from Vedanta Shravana Manana Nididhyasana to a Jnani Bhakta and moves on towards liberation.
So verse 67 talks about the qualifications for the Gita study. Tapas, Bhakti, Shushrusha and Anusuya being the four important ones. And in short, Bhagavad Gita should not be given to people who do not have the discipline, who are non-devotees and who criticize the Bhagavad Gita. Verse 68 and 69 talk about the glory of a teacher. Manusheshu saha priyakrit tamaha. Lord Krishna says, the one who shares the Gita wisdom is the one who is very, very dear to me. And so also a Gita student and also a casual listener. Verse 70 and 71 talk about the Shishya Stuti. A serious qualified student will get moksha. A casual, unprepared student will be freed from the papas, for the punya karma that is incurred by this knowledge. So he gets Svarga. And in verse 72, Lord Krishna questions Arjuna, "O Arjuna, has your delusion disappeared as you have listened with one-pointed attention?" And Krishna is all smiling. And as Arjuna answers, "Nashto moha smritir labdva tvat prasadat mayachyuta." My delusion is gone and my knowledge has been gained. And that is all by your grace, O Krishna. Sthitosmi gata sandehaha. I remain free from all the doubts. Tava vachanam karishye. I shall follow your instructions. And I have decided to fight this righteous war. And from verse 74 to 78 is what Sanjaya is telling King Dhritarashtra. Sanjaya was blessed to receive the supremely secret knowledge because Vyasacharya had given the Divya Drishti to him. Sanjaya, giving his own reactions, glorifying the gospel of Gita and recollecting the marvelous forms of the Lord, concludes this chapter with verse 78. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir Dhruvanitir Matir Mama. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, where Lord Krishna is there as the teacher of Vedanta, the Brahma Vidya Guru. Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, where Arjuna is there wielding his bow. Bow represents the Swadharma Anushtana. Dharma Rakshanam requires bow and arrow. Wherever such a teacher and a student are there, Gita wisdom will be there. It will never die. So many thousands of years have gone by, but Gita is still relevant. The benefits of Gita teaching primarily being moksha. The others are Shri, wealth, Vijaya, success, Bhuti, prosperity, Niti, justice, and they are Dhruva. They will be permanently present. Iti me matihi. This is my verdict and this is my conviction. Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagvadgita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Moksha Sannyasa Yogo Dhamma Ashtadashodhyaya Hari Om.
You're not audible.
I think all are muted.
Yes. Now I think.
Yes, audible.
Yes, now I could. I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute. I kept trying and making action. Well, thank you so much for that wonderful summary, Dr. Ravishankar and Dr. Raksha. It was amazing because this is the longest chapter, contains so much, and you were able to do it in 1 hour. Hats off to you. It was amazing. Thank you so much. And with this, friends, we have come to the last chapter. We have concluded the Bhagavad Gita, and we are so grateful to Dr. Hegde. We are so grateful to the whole team of Param Vedanta. And now it's open for questions. If anyone has any questions, kindly unmute and ask your question. We are so sorry, in between there were interruptions, but I think that person has been removed. extremely sorry for what happened in between. And now it's open for questions. Yes?